And we continue now with Karl Rove. Karl, the polls show that, in fact, you're right in your analysis here. More than a third disapprove of Obama's handling of the Blagojevich scandal. And then we have nearly half saying that they think Team Obama is involved in the scandal. I think one of the issues is that he's been very coy and not giving answers. So what I put together, let's go back to the videotape. Barack Obama often repeating on the campaign trail that he wanted full transparency. Let's roll that.
The more transparency we have in the system, the more accountability we have in the system. The more accountability we have to the American people, to the taxpayers, the more likely that our money is going to be well spent.
Part of what we have to do is invite the American people back to participate in their government again. Part of what we need to do is rebuild trust in our government again. And that means being open and transparent and accountable to the American people.
I'll let citizens track federal grants, contracts, earmarks, and lobbying contracts. I'll let you participate in government forums, ask questions in real time, offer suggestions that will be reviewed before decisions are made.
I've always said that I will have a table like this where all the key players are sitting, and we'll televise it on C-SPAN so that the American people understand what the choices are.
What our end goals are. Where are we going? What are we trying to achieve? And that there's clarity and transparency to our plan. That doesn't mean that there aren't going to be adjustments over the course of weeks or months to respond to changing situations.
Karl, is he living up to the transparency promise?
Well, look, these applied to when he became president. He's not yet president. I do think he's got a problem with the transparency and the openness and the candor on this. I don't want to make more of it than it is. It is troubling. It's a problem he could have avoided. It's not going to damage his numbers enormously between now and the time that he comes in, but this is time that would be better spent talking about things other than whether or not somebody on his staff, somebody close to him, talked to somebody close to Governor Blagojevich about who might or might not be an acceptable member of the United States Senate to replace him.
One of the biggest problems understanding the process, Karl, is that Blagojevich is going to want his sentence reduced. So that means he's probably going to be singing like a bird. We know that Tony Rezko, who the Obamas have this unsavory business deal with, that's probably going to come back up into play because we know that Tony Rezko is probably, he's mentioned 170 times in this complaint. He's a big issue. What else has he told the prosecutors? Do you think he's got a Rezko problem?
Well, I've always thought he has a difficulty explaining the relationship with Rezko, and I've always thought it was eye-catching to me that they stiff-armed the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times for months and months and months over what the relationship was really all about until the day that the Reverend Wright scandal broke, and when that was the day they called him up and said, "Come on in this afternoon, you get one interview and we'll dump it all out." And of course, what we read on that Saturday morning was that the relationship with Rezko was deeper, bigger, more important, financially more remunerative to the campaign than we ever thought was possible. And so I do think there is a problem with Rezko. Again, I don't want to get ahead of it because the country is tired of scandals and the country is tired of being told one thing and done another. I'll tell you, there's a bigger problem that emerged to me today, and it was on page 13A of the New York Times. We've had this week one appointment to the cabinet of somebody with a lobbyist as a spouse. We're about ready to have another member of the White House staff named with a lobbyist as a spouse. This was a candidate who promised that under no circumstances would lobbyists have undue influence in his administration, and yet we're now seeing that the rules that he wants to apply to people in the administration don't necessarily apply to
Karl,
their
it
spouses.
looks like you're looking for excuses to, tag Obama with this stuff. First of all, the fact there might be a spouse as a lobbyist doesn't mean he's going to have undue influence or she will have undue influence.
Alan, this was raised in the pages of the New York Times, which is not necessarily a conservative newspaper.
I love to see you quote the Times. It brings a thrill to my heart to see you do that. But let me go back to something you said last segment. For example, Gregory Craig, the transition attorney, is keeping the U.S. Attorney's Office informed. The U.S. Attorney, as we pointed out in the last segment, asked the transition office not to release info until the week of December 22nd because of an ongoing investigation. You're saying Obama should do it or could do it anyway, but that would be perceived as interfering with the work of the U.S. Attorney. Shouldn't he be respecting what the U.S. U.S. attorney is asking him to do in this case.
What he should have done is put himself in a place where nobody would have had to pop up from the U.S. attorney's office and say anything to him. He should have, right from the beginning, been more forthcoming. He should have been more forceful about decrying Blagojevich's activities at the beginning, and he should have come right out at the beginning and acknowledged to the American people exactly what we already all know, which is that somebody on his staff, somebody in his team, talked to somebody in the Governor Blagojevich's office. That's not the impression they left with the American people. They should have right out from the beginning said, here's what we did and here's who did it. Answer the questions and been done with it.
But the American people have not reacted in terms of his favorability ratings to this, so if it's left a negative impression on the American people, they haven't responded that way.
Alan, these things tend to be corrosive over time, and this is an unnecessary distraction from him. Again, I repeat, you may be the only person in America who thinks this isn't bad news for him. He should have handled this earlier. It will show up in his numbers. He will have a wonderful time between now and January 20th. He'll go skies high after that point, but his numbers will be lower than they should have been otherwise because some people will say, you know what, why didn't he shoot straight with me on this? And it's unnecessary.
Do you think he's hiding something?
I just think he's mishandling this. This is a mistake on his part. It's a PR disaster that could have easily been avoided.
All right, Karl, thanks for being with us. Coming up, more on the Illinois governor scandal.